Let's start at the beginning, though. So you're a kid from Bayside, Queens. You did not grow up rich or poor, right? About middle class, would you say?
Yeah.
And your parents were what?
So my parents were both CPAs. And, it's interesting because that you think, well, wow, both are CPAs professionals. You'd probably be upper middle class, maybe even, lower wealthy, right? But my parents really struggled growing up and kind of didn't realize that till I was about 10. And when I was 10, I remember it's a funny story. I wanted to buy a pair of Puma sneakers. They were, all their age back then, right? Pumas.
Mm-hmm.
And they were probably $19. And I think it was my birthday was coming up. And I asked my mom, I want Pumas. And she's like, we can't afford it. I'm like, what do you mean you can't afford it? Like you and dad are professionals. They both were. My mother was like a trailblazer, just so you know, like in the 50s, back in Mad Men days, she was going into the city and working as a CPA. At a big eight, it was a big eight back then, accounting firm. And then she was the oldest woman in New York State to pass the bar when she was 68. So she's a real piece of work, my mom, right? She's
Amazing.
awesome. And, but they had no money. I was like, well, and she sat me down and she showed me, what was going on. She showed me they made X and here are our expenses and, our rent and so forth. And at the end of the month, we have a little bit left over. It's for a college fund. And I was appalled because I was like, it didn't add to me. It was something seemed like it was off. How could two such brilliant people, hardworking people, educated people, industrious people be broke? It didn't make sense. And it wasn't long after I think it started to occur to me there were certain other elements that were necessary to achieve financial success. And one of them was taking risk. My parents were completely risk averse, depression mentality, and also they were really against any type of sales or marketing type ideas. They just shunned them and thought they were evil. And because of that, they were never able to use their services or market their services, their wares, so to speak. So they worked for other people. They worked for a paycheck and they struggled badly. So I think a lot of that went into my makeup of like what it really means to succeed financially. It's not just about hard work. Hard work, of course, is required. It's not just about education. Education is usually important, not always, but at least self-education of some sort. But there's other components involved. And one of those is going to certainly be, taking some risks, working for yourself, or at least being in an industry like sales where you can almost work for yourself, and risk taking. So very important lesson I learned very young.
So how did you understand, how did you become such a good salesman? Because if you read up on Jordan Belfort, you realize one of the things that made the difference in your life is you know how to sell. And it's not that easy for the average person. I think a lot of people are more introverted. They don't want to put themselves out there. They don't want to have to sort of, make themselves feel vulnerable by asking somebody to buy something from them. So how did you get so good at that?
Part of it, I think, is a God-given gift. Seriously. I mean, I think that we all of us, each person possesses certain gifts and certain, deficits, right? I think in my personal genetic makeup and a combination of nature and nurture, I ended up naturally being very, very talented at sales. But then I trained myself and honed that skill over years and years of hard work and selling to a razor's edge. And then I found myself in a position very young when I started my firm where I was teaching a methodology of sales that was intuitive to me. It didn't have a name back then, and it was working real well until I tried to go to a much more difficult type of sale. And when I was faced with this difficult sale, I could do it, yet the people that worked for me couldn't. And it forced me to come up with a new way of training salespeople, which is really what allowed me to understand my own sales process much better. So, by becoming a teacher, it made me a far better actual student. I mean, a salesperson myself.
You have to think about it.
It happened.
There's a moment in your book, late in the book, where your daughter says, you were supposed to take me to the Blockbuster. You promised to take me to the Blockbuster video. And you say, I had promised her nothing of the sort, but I appreciated the negotiating tactic. Start from a position of strength. Assume the sale is already done.
I thought it was, and also the tonality. Like, Dad, you told me we're going to Blockbuster, right? Like, I'm like, what? Like almost what she phrases it declarative as a question.
It's good. I learned. Yeah. I understand. That's how I'm going to pitch my next big guest. You promised me you'd come on. What? Who the hell are you? Okay, so you you were a worker when you were a kid. You'd had the paper route and you did all the stuff that, you know, a lot of successful people I know have done. That you did not sit on the couch watching reruns of Little House on the Prairie like somebody else I know when I see in the mirror. Then you did not immediately go to Wall Street. You decided that you wanted to make money, and you decided to be a dentist. And then tell us what happened your first day at dental school.
That was really, about, I think it's a reflection of belief systems that, we all have infused into us by our parents, society, our peer group. And, my parents are just very highly educated people. And to them, it was like, there's only one noble way to become wealthy. And that is, doctor, or dentist. And like, at the time, if you asked me at the age of 21, what do you want to be for a living? I'd say I want to be rich for a living. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. So always playing in my head like doctor, dentist, rich. Now my uncle was a dentist and he was very successful. I was like, well, my uncle's a dentist 4 years, medical school will be another 10. I'm going to kill myself in 10 years. So I said, I'll go to dental school. So I applied, did very well in school as I got in. And in the first day of dental school, the dean stands up in front of the audience of his Baltimore College of Dental Surgery in Maryland. And he says, welcome to the Baltimore College of Dental Surgery. She's proud to be here. Dentistry is a wonderful profession. And he goes, but let me say this. The golden age of dentistry is over. If you're here to make money, you're probably in the wrong place. Like, what the hell? I'm in the wrong place. And I got up and I literally walked out my first day and I dropped out. Yeah.
That too is such a moment. It tells us a lot about you, because I would think, honestly, having been to law school and practiced law, at that point, your ego's into it. You've told everybody you're going to dental school. You have some sort of, skin in the game. So the fact that you got up and walked out does say something about you. Like, it doesn't take you long to make a decision about your life and your future and what you're going to do next.
That's an important thing that you're hitting on here, because one of the biggest mistakes that I think people make, and we all make, even I still make it, but I try to stop myself from making it, is that it's not just ego. It's part ego. It's just part when you get caught up in something you're in, like you can't see the forest through the trees. Like, anyone on the outside say, what are you doing? No, it's not working. It's time to make a move, get out, go do something else. So many people will stay with something to a point where it's obvious it's not working for them. It's obvious it's not going to get them the outcome they want, but they feel like they've put time into, they're invested in it. They've done things, they've told people they're doing things, so they feel they have to be consistent with that. Yet to their own detriment, they stay and that other opportunities pass them by. And I think that's a very, very powerful thing to for all entrepreneurs and just success-oriented people, is to always be looking at your surroundings and what's going on and just being honest. Just like, is this working or is this not? I don't believe you just keep trying and quitting. I'm not like that at all. But at a certain point, you have to get realistic with yourself and say, you know what? I should be making a pivot here and trying something else, because what I'm doing is simply not working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you had your eyes on the prize. You knew your overall goal was to get rich. It was not to be a dentist. That was just a means to an ends. And when you found out it wasn't the means, you were like, peace out.